In this video, we are talking all about Bob Iger's comments towards content at that Morgan Stanley conference. We're also going to break down and talk about some of this new technology that WDI has developed that they're showcasing at this convention. It's all pretty interesting. We're going to discuss it up next on OG55. Welcome aboard to another episode of OG55. We have a lot to discuss today, but before we do that, we're going to introduce my fantastic panel. Right over here, we got producer Dre, Dr. Dre, the fire marshal, the host of Freshly Squeezed show here on the channel. Dre, welcome back, sir.
Hey, happy to be back. Happy to be back. This is, I know, OG, you first sent me some of this stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, that is hilarious. We got to share that with our audience. So it's going to be great to see. George, you also have some stuff that you're bringing to the table here. So it's going to be really fun to go over it with you guys, I am sure. If you guys want to follow me, you can go and do so right down there at VashSky. Just go ahead and type it in, and it should pop up for all the, as Christine Waysons McCarthy would say, for all the
robust
discussion right there. And if you want to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now, Orange Grove 55. We have some amazing shows, including Citrus Corner down below, Orange Grove 55, to my left, I think. Yes. And my show on there as well, Freshly Squeezed, your source for juice, news, and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove. Speaking of Star Tours and Star Wars, we have an amazing show with our very own Jay from Story Geeks, who where we talk about The Mandalorian, season 3, episodes 1 and 2, break it down a little bit, also the future of Lucasfilm. Feel free to check that out, guys. It is really, really good.
It's a fantastic episode. Actually, I'll link that at the very end of this show. I think that was a really good episode. Everyone needs to check that out.
Fantastic.
And down below, we got Mr. Manscape, Mr. Balls to the Wall, the Disney Family Man 23. Welcome back, brother.
Thanks for having me. And boy, does there's so much going on there just with that introduction alone. It's like, that's great. Yeah. But if you want to check out my clean version of my channel, Disney Family Man 23 on YouTube, you could also interact with me on Twitter at Disney George. You could check out the podcast I'm part of called A Walk with Walt. And of course, you can find me here on my home base with Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
Pay attention, it's Joe time.
There we go. There we go. All right. So first up to bat, we are going to talk about, well, look, we could go down and break down the comments made by Bob Iger directly, or we can have a little fun with this and break it down through the eyes of Den of Nerds. I think we got to break it down through the eyes of Den of Nerds. He is a phenomenal content creator who is hilarious. But before we do that, I do want to issue little bit of a warning. Josh from Den of Nerds gets a little spicy. Very spicy, and there is some language in this particular clip. So you might want to, if you have any kids in the room, might want to clear them out for this particular segment. Might want to pop in those headphones or earbuds maybe, because it does get pretty spicy, but that's what makes it so fun. That's why we love it so much. So
it's
all right.
It's a fun watch, that is for sure. And yes, if you got some little ones, maybe they should just see themselves out on this segment anyway. But for us adults, it's gonna be a fun time, I guarantee it.
Absolutely. All right, so let's go ahead and dive right in. We'll kind of do like what we usually do. We'll let Josh say it in his own words, and we'll break it down along the way.
Absolutely. 100%. Here we go.
And so let's frame this a little bit, okay? Let's set this up. So here's the deal. Disney, and it's not just Disney, but a lot of companies in the entertainment sector, even in the tech sector, facing incredible difficulty right now. 3 years ago, we were all on top of the world. Everybody had a bunch of money. Consuming was at an all-time high. which is a whole nother thing. But it just seemed like everybody was spending $1 bajillion, expand. There's all this untapped potential in this market, this, that, second, and the third. Streaming's the future, etc. Now, 3 years later, we're in a recession, probably past peak consumption, and a lot of companies are getting crushed in their stock prices. And just in general, the market is on an incredible downturn. We are in a recession, despite what you might be told.
Hey, he's not wrong about that, by the way, either. We've had some very worrisome news in the financial in the financial field, right? Over the past week or so, some banks not looking so hot. Some technology companies are actually kind of roped up into that, especially Roku, for example, which, if you remember, OG, Roku and Disney were having a little bit of conflict there regarding the ad tier, right? And OG, you want to explain that a little bit?
No, they did. They had a little friction, and now Roku's going through it. So that'll be very interesting because of this bank, right?
Right. Apparently, I think a fourth of their cash on hand was actually in SVB. I'm sorry, and that's not good. So we'll have to see what happens there. But yes, I mean during these economic times, right? There's a little bit of uncertainty, especially for entertainment companies and ad-based entertainment firms like Disney, which is why Bob Iger, I think, went in front of Morgan Stanley Technology, Media, and Telecom Conference to actually talk about this stuff. And, Den of Nerds breaks it down his own way. So we'll continue.
Yep.
We're in a recession and things are rough and bad. Bob Iger, I'll remind you, was brought back as the CEO on a fucking Sunday after the guy he put in charge before he left was fumbling the bag, and they voted him out on a Sunday. Okay? We've been talking about this for some time. Disney's facing a lot of challenges, some unique challenges, some challenges that are pretty much everybody's facing right now in this constrained market. So anything he says, anytime he gets out and does some kind of public speaking, he addresses these sort of questions, he is trying to move that stock price, that little green and or red line that goes up and down based on what people on Wall Street think of what he is saying.
Very true, right? So, he's not going to go up there and say, "Oh, it's all bad. You better divest. You better get out of this." He's not going to say the sky is falling, right? Obviously, him as a CEO, what he says matters, and that could affect the stock price. So you kind of want to view it through that lens a little bit here. Also, too, some people were like, well, why didn't we get more Avatar news and all this kind of stuff? Know your audience. This is investors. This is Wall Street, they're interested in big capital expenditures, and when you have details, I'm sure he'll actually provide them. But this is not quite the venue for that.
Well, it's not, and fans need to also realize that not everybody follows this stuff like we do. So, like, just because it's not news to you, fandom, doesn't mean that the suits in the audience at the Morgan Stanley, event. That they've heard this news. They most likely have not. They are probably not on Diz Twitter. They probably do not watch OG55. So this is news to them. So Iger has to speak to them and then, bring this stuff up, even though it might not be news to us. So we got to keep that in mind here.
100%.
Okay. So we'll get into this, and we'll talk about the good and the bad and some of the frustrating things. So it says here, Bob Iger, Disney will reduce costs on films, TV shows to focus on quality, not volume. It comes in the form of reducing the expense per content, whether it's a TV series or a film, where costs have just skyrocketed, the Disney chief told the investor conference.
That's an important note. Costs have skyrocketed, and Den of Nerds talks about that a little bit, and he's a little bit unsure about how that's happened. From what I understand, production costs have skyrocketed. Remember, Disney, along with many other studios in this space, implemented very costly COVID procedures as part of their productions. And well, I mean, when you implement a big change, seismic change like that to the industry, well, it's obvious going to bring its own form of costs. Time has been stretched out, right, in order to allow for small groups to be on set at any one time. And well, cameras rolling, time is money. There's a plethora of ways where it can kind of tick up exponentially.
Inflation is also a huge factor.
Absolutely.
But the only thing I get worried about whenever I hear a guy like Bob Iger come out there and say that we're looking to cut costs.
Sure.
I see the Marvel movies lately, and the CGI is looking pretty rough. I hope they're very, very. I hope this is surgical, and more than it is like with a giant axe, right? I hope they figure a way to maintain, and to Iger's credit, he does say we want to focus on quality, not quantity, and that's great. But when you're really cutting budgets, you got to be really careful as to where you cut, because that quality can start to go downhill real fast. You cut from the wrong spot.
That would actually make him sound like a hypocrite, because then he's telling his people, his staff, I'm holding you accountable for your work, and if the work doesn't come up to par, you're getting the axe. Well, if you're going to say that statement, then you have to, as you said, OG, you have to be careful of what you're cutting, because then it's going to make that person accountable for shitty ass looking products in the end.
Right. Exactly. You need to maintain that quality. You can't cut. I mean, one of the big issues right now with Marvel is that quality. I'd like to be completely honest.
Oh, it is definitely
in Multiverse of Madness. I mean, I was rooting for that movie like crazy. I mean, because I'm a huge Wanda fan. I love her character, Scarlet Witch. But let's be real, that movie did not look good. A lot of the CGI looked like something from 2002. I mean, She-Hulk.
Well, Quantum Mania, that technology looked like it came from 1998.
Right.
I mean, it's getting worse. Honestly, it's not getting better.
It is. And so that's why I'm a little bit concerned with the cost cutting. But now here's the thing. There are other issues with Marvel when it comes to the CGI, like the workforce. We know a lot of the effects artists and stuff. They're not too happy with Marvel and the deadlines they set and the pay and all that. That's a huge factor in all this. I just hope whatever they got to do behind the scenes to make the CGI look better, and then to also make these films and TV shows on a decent budget. I hope they can accomplish that, but I would be lying if I said I wasn't nervous.
We will talk about the performance of recent films in a moment, but George, how did the VFX work for Quantum Mania look? Specifically, not regarding the characters. We know that leaves some to be desired.
Yes.
But the actual environments themselves, how did that look?
To me, it still seemed like if it was like a low budget independent film. It's almost like it almost feels like homemade movies now are starting to gain more popularity than actual big blockbuster cinema films. That people are actually making movies straight out of their own homes, putting it on their laptop or their PC or what have you, and it looks like a legitimate film, where these filmmaking companies that they're making these supposed big time, big budget films, but in the end, it's not up to par. If I had to actually compare Quantum Mania's special effects and CGI, honestly, I would compare it to Spy Kids.
Wow.
Whoa. Okay, that's harsh. From what I understand, they actually utilized the technology of the volume that they use for the production of The Mandalorian.
And Mando looks great, so that's why I'm like,
amazing.
what's going on?
Yeah. If you put both of them side by side, you would think the technology isn't even on the same planet compared to Mando. Which
is weird, because the volume is a way that you can kind of cut down on costs, cut down on post-production work, and so forth. It's weird how we're seeing a big disparity between these two productions utilizing similar technology. Go ahead, OG, you were saying?
No, it is weird. Why can Lucasfilm knock it out of the park with the same technology, but Marvel can't? It's really odd. So something's going on over there at Marvel. I don't know if it's Victoria Alonso. I don't know if it's just maybe Feige is losing his touch. I don't know. Maybe it's the tension with the effects animators. I have no idea.
Has Feige made any kind of initial statement to anything? Because I mean, from my end, I've heard not a peep out of him.
Well, I mean, he's not going to come out and say like, "Yeah, I understand that the CGI looks like dog shit the past few." So
yeah, but I mean, but did he mention anything as far as like maybe in a sense of saying, we're striving, we're trying to push, our limits, and we're trying to, like how they kind of schmooze their way. Like he made no statement of that notion.
I haven't heard anything. Have you, Dre? Anything?
I haven't heard anything. I mean, and to be honest, I mean, is that his what do you want to say, his realm of expertise anymore? Because from what I understand, that VFX side of the business has been turned over to Victoria Alonso in totality, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, OG? Is she's taken on a more of a leadership role? That's where she comes from.
Right. She came on board a few years ago, and she is much more involved than she used to be. And I think that's
seen this decline ever since, right?
Right. And that's why ironically, I actually sent that super chat into Josh and the Nerds. I brought that up to him, and he was like, "Oh, wow, I didn't even realize that." But you're right. She's high up on the food chain now, and the decline coincides with her getting promoted. Now, again, that's circumstantial. She might have nothing to do with this. To be fair, she might not have. Well, she does have something to do with the effects. We do know that that's part of her purview, but she might not have anything to do with the decline. To be fair, but it does seem a little coincidental to me that when she came on, suddenly we're seeing a decline. And sometimes too many coincidences aren't a coincidence.
Right. And I would say too. I mean, the other thing that I've been hearing, because I have an associate, let's say, who is very much into the VFX world. And I asked them, I said, look, we've been hearing, word around Tinseltown is that Marvel has been particularly difficult to deal with, especially for the VFX community. And, I guess there are problems related to crunch and deadlines and so forth, and they're being overworked, being underpaid. What is going on here? What could be the core problem here? And he's like, well, look, if you don't have enough rendering time, if you don't have enough time to actually develop these things as a programmer or render them out, you're going to have some maybe problems within the VFX department. And we kind of came to the agreement that it's probably mismanagement more than anything else that is plaguing the VFX problems here. Not just the quality of the rendering or the quality of the images that are produced on screen, but the time allotted for those things. And how do you get to that point? Well, if you have last minute reshoots, let's say, if you have last minute characters interjected or stripped, if you have last minute script rewrites and so forth, if you have mismanagement regarding these films coming in, whether it's development, production, post-production, etc., that could lead to that crunch. That could lead to only a small window of time available in order to produce a finished product. So that could be happening there. Again, where does Bob Iger see Marvel's problems at? Something totally different. And that's kind of why we wanted to get into this, because I think it's pretty fascinating. Here we go. It is.
Disney CEO... I got to drop the music just a little bit. Disney CEO Bob Iger said Thursday that his company is closely examining all aspects of its content business across film, TV, and its plots. As it plots the best path forward in a tricky media environment that includes linear TV business in decline, a theatrical film business with an uncertain future, and a streaming business that is growing but requires a path to profitability. Speaking at Morgan Stanley conference. Okay, so it wasn't at a college campus. It was literally at Morgan Stanley. Iger said that the company will specifically be looking at how much it's spending on content and how many projects it produces going forward. He said here, I'm really pleased that the support... I'm I'm really pleased that the support that I'm getting from the content creators of the company is significant and real. And it comes in the form of reducing the expense per content, whether it's a TV series or a film, where costs have just skyrocketed in a huge way, not a supportable way, in my opinion. They all agree to that, Iger said, adding that it was also about understanding how much volume we need, reducing how much we make. So it's how much we spend on what we make and how much we make.
Okay.
Who the fuck?
Okay. I think I know what Bob Iger is saying here. I think I know. I think I understand. Now, Dan of Nerds is going to have his own opinion, which is great. But I think I know where a little bit of this is coming from. We heard, actually, I think it was DSMY Newscast, produced a video recently about Imagineering, for example. And during that video, he made the assertion that WDI under Chapek's leadership, for example, were spending a little bit too much in the development phase, not much in the production phase. and it came to a point where last minute cuts needed to be made in producing those products that hurt the overall quality of that product. For example, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, Cosmic Rewind, right? We saw the concept artwork for Cosmic Rewind and how there was going to be a pre-show with animatronic characters. I believe it was Rocket and Groot, right? And they were going to be showing us, in the room, basically, detailing what our adventure was actually going to be with them. Well, obviously, that's much different than the final finished product that we got.
But
so
to be fair, though, too, that's always been the case with Disney. The concept art, I mean, the Indiana Jones adventure art was way more ambitious than what we got.
Indeed. I suppose for the concept art leading up to that time period, it was very accurate to what was actually given. And then in the years post Chapek, I believe what he was saying was there were some cuts made along the way, and we saw that. I mean, the Galactic Star Cruiser is probably the biggest example of this. It looks nothing like the early concept artwork, and you have to ask yourself maybe why that is. And now, if his assertion is correct, well, you can kind of see across the board, maybe we're spending a little bit too much. For example, Lightyear. Do we really need a NASA scientist on board with us? Right. Probably not. Can we make a cut there? Yes. And at least the way Iger puts it, people are on board with this idea that Disney might be spending a little bit too much. Not just on product either, but maybe on promotion as well.
Well, Oh, sorry. Go ahead, OG.
Oh, I was just say real quick, George. And that's one of the big issues with like animation is like they fly these animators out to like Norway because they're going to do a Frozen movie, and it's like, that maybe that worked when in Walt Disney's era, right? We live in the world of the internet. I mean, you can research Norway on the internet. I understand, like, there's something to be said about being there and experiencing. I get all that, but it's not necessarily like needed to create a great movie that's believable. For you don't necessarily need that. You have resources now to find all that on the internet and to research it. You don't need to be boots on the ground like you did maybe in 1935. Go ahead, George.
Oh no, I was just off of what you were saying real quick, OG. And even like if I was to watch Frozen or Frozen 2, it doesn't scream to me, oh, I actually see like realistic locations of Norway.
In Norway.
It's like
Norse
it's still,
mythology.
Yes, exactly. It still seems very, mythical and fictional. So I agree with you. I don't even think they would even have to do really too much any research, even on the internet. Just kind of use your imagination, and because that's what it ends up becoming anyway. It's like everything that they go and research, it goes right out the door anyway. So to me, it's a waste of time. It's more time that they could be putting into the arc of the story and character plot and what have you. It's like stop.
Apparently, that was a big push by John Lasseter when he came. Apparently, from what I understand, he made the research trips a big part of the development process for films and so forth before they actually hit production, so that animators could be inspired by that process and so forth. You make a good point, OG. Do we necessarily need that for animation? That could be a case-by-case basis for sure. I still think if you're trying to recreate something in real life or loosely based on real life for the parks, you might want to go to those places.
I was just going to say, Vash, now with Lasseter's case that he made the Imagineers go down Route 66 for Cars Land, that was much needed to build that land.
Joe Rohde toured various parts of Asia and Africa for various parts of Animal Kingdom, for example. Probably need to do that just to kind of see just firsthand how you can maybe construct things.
There's more physicality in that theme park experience.
Exactly, right? Yeah. So, yeah. You got what I'm saying. But
coming back really quick of what you were mentioning about WDI, and that's even just like rushing things just to get something done and kind of covered up. And I think we kind of seen that with the recent Woody's Roundup Barbecue building where they kind of throw up these big cardboard looking platforms that is, to cover up the sight lines. And it's like, it's supposed to be looking like Andy's drawings that are posted up on this big cardboard box. But it's like, could we do something with a little bit more finesse? Not just something that's like you're putting a Band-Aid up just to say, oh, well, you're not going to look at this sight line, but we'll put this here because it'll look more realistic to you. I don't know.
It's an idea. These things cost money. Where are you going to spend the money? That's the big question here.
Right.
It already feels like goobly glob. I'm going to be honest with you. It already feels like goobly glob. Here's the thing. Again, he's talking on Wall Street, dude. I think he's like literally talking on Wall Street here with Morgan Stanley, but he's saying that he's getting support from the people, meaning, like, I'll translate it. I told all these motherfuckers that we need to spend less money and we need to actually make money and things are different now. And they all agree that not getting fired is in their best interest. That's what that means. It's so weird to me, though, that the cost per content has skyrocketed. How is that actually the case? Like, what? I mean, I suppose there's inflation. And I suppose there's an extra cost now to build sets, to, do all of these different things. But why has cost skyrocketed? I don't think cost has skyrocketed. I think they just had this ridiculous vision of unlimited growth, of unlimited untapped market, and they just thought they could spend forever, and based upon evaluations connected to potential growth, they'd always have the cash. You know what I mean? I think that's really what it is. But again, he's saying the right things. This isn't even the really triggering part to me. However, Iger left open the potential for making content that the company could sell elsewhere. As we look to reduce the content that we're creating for our platforms, there probably are opportunities to license to third parties, Iger said. For a while, that was verbatim or something we couldn't possibly do because we were so favoring our own streaming platforms. But if we get to a point where we need less content for those platforms and we still have the capability of producing that content, why not use it to grow revenue?
So who does that sound like?
Sounds like our boy Zazzy. That's what it sounds
like. Zazzy, right? We'll have Dan explain.
And that's what we would likely do. That's kind of interesting to me. This feels a lot like the David Zaslav approach. Right. And so when Zaslav was coming in and he was doing a lot of discussions about what they're going to do, this was something he said as well, where he was like, yo, why are we saving everything from this streaming platform? We could do, hotels. We could do airplanes. We could be putting it out on other even streaming platforms or available for digital release. The idea of not just making content for the streaming service, but like figuring out other pay periods for these things. It's really interesting. I mean, look, when it comes to Disney Plus, and I think maybe he'll even speak to this a little bit later, but like even access to the Disney Vault is probably just like the appropriate value proposition for Disney Plus. And what does Disney Plus currently cost right now? Because I think when it first started, it was like $7 or $8 a month, right?
I think it's George,
Well,
I think it's about $8 for
It's
the ad
seven.
tier.
It's $7.99.
with ads though.
and then 12, I
Yeah,
think
12.
for
It's $7.99 with the ads. $12.99 for ad free.
Yeah,
something
and
like that. Yeah.
and it's interesting. I think Josh here is actually really spot on when he says the real value proposition with Disney Plus is the Vault. I mean, I can't speak for anybody else, but the main thing that I watch on Disney Plus is the old content. I'm constantly digging into like the old Zorro and the Davy Crockett and the Pollyanna and the Swiss Family Robinson. That's what I'm digging into
I'm
most of
still
the
waiting
time.
for that 1964 New York World's Fair presentation that they were supposed to have on.
Right. No, yeah, me too. That was like 2 years ago. I mean, we
Yeah.
still haven't seen it, but it's all the old school stuff. I think Josh is right on that, where it's like that's where the value is for Disney Plus. And look, I get it. Like Mando right now is I love Mando. Season 3 has been an absolute banger so far. But those kind of shows are kind of far and few between on this platform. What takes your time in between those shows, and it's the Vault. That's what most people want.
Yeah, I think I think there should be maybe a push from Disney themselves in order to get some of that Vault content scanned in or restored, upscaled to 4K, and put it on the actual platform. I would, if I had limited resources to necessarily negotiate between some of these things, I would put it towards that. My just speaking for myself, because I think you're right, OG. I think there is value in the Vault, and I think there's also value in the kind of hit animated films. Right, it's a digital babysitter. We see the animated films pop up every single month or so on Nielsen when you actually go by film. I mean, Disney dominates that list. Whereas if you go by overall content, well, Netflix is I think it's got like 8 of the top 10 spots right now. I think Disney only has 1. So I think that's where the value proposition is.
I think they might. I think Simpsons is on that list too, though, pretty high up. They consistently churn out high numbers.
Simpsons is on that list for sure, but top 10 as revealed by Nielsen, I think it was all Netflix. I'll go. We'll go ahead and we'll check it out here.
And while Dre is looking that up, but yeah, there's so much older content that it's still not on the platform. I believe it's Make Mine Music, So Dear to My Heart. I'm still waiting on more of those 80s, 90s nostalgia shows. There's so much content that's still locked up in the vault, and I feel like that rather than Disney kind of showcasing their rich history of what they owned, it's like they're just trying to throw stuff in there that's more current and up to date, but may not be as popular, but just to kind of add in more tiles, just to compete.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so here's that list. Okay, yeah, you're right. Black Panther, Wakanda Forever is the only one.
Yeah, only one. As far as original series go, Netflix obviously nominates that list, but I want to go ahead and juxtapose that with movies. Black Panther, Wakanda Forever was definitely number 1, but even then, man, there's a lot of Netflix stuff on there. You can see Minions: Rise of Groot also there. That's an interesting thing there for sure.
Digital babysitter. I mean, that's what it is. You put that on for the kids, just like the Moana or the
Yeah. I mean, it's man, it's something. It's going to be difficult to compete in this space, and I think Bob Iger knows this, which is why he's kind of switching strategy right now and saying, do we necessarily need to go after Netflix and kind of, be in this kind of streaming war with them? Probably not. Probably better usage of our limited capital would be to develop the content that we have produced from for 70, 80, 100 years, right? develop that content in house, put it on our streaming platform when appropriate. But maybe we should look at these other avenues to see, hey, can we license out content? Can we sell a Hulu? Can we get a royalty off of that? Can we do things to kind of make this less of a money suck that it is? And I think that is the appropriate strategy right now. Also, too, Zaslav, like we brought up before, that's kind of his strategy right now. And he quoted Iger and Kevin Feige and so forth about or Alan Horn, I should say, about their strategies regarding content. It's like, oh, this is the model to follow. It's kind of funny how Iger now sounds like Zaslav, but really Zaslav just sounds like Iger from a few years back.
Yeah, Zazzy is like Bob Iger's biggest fan. Every quarterly earnings that Warner Brothers Discovery has, this guy like fawns over the guy. It's pretty hilarious. And now you're right. It's ironic that Iger is following the Zazzy model. I don't know. Maybe they should just merge the companies and call it a day. They seem to be,
yeah. They seem to be smitten anyway with one another, right? Yeah. Let's continue.
What's Disney Plus currently cost, guys? Anybody here? Anybody in the chat know? I only asked that because I think they raised their prices a little bit. Have they not?
$8, $12. Which, by the way, Iger was he was not necessarily on board with when those price hikes hit, or when they were announced for December. I think back in like September or something like that. Wasn't very on board with it. Now he's like, ooh, maybe that's a good way to go. Go ahead, OG.
Well, yeah. Well, and Iger recently, I think maybe it was at this Morgan Stanley thing, said that they went a little too aggressive with the price hikes for the parks too.
Yes. Yep.
So that was interesting.
Absolutely.
With no ads, it's $10.99. Really?
It's about 11 or 12. Something.
Okay, Jake, there's a lot of interesting stuff today, bro. Okay, I'm gonna throw that word around. That's crazy, dude. $7 for ad supported, $11 for free. Yo, chilling in the basement. Appreciate that, man. Welcome back to the Prime level. That's crazy. I don't think you need to do that. I think they should have just kept it at $7 and then maybe did what he's talking about doing right now. You know what I mean? Like leveraging out the new content to other services. It's kind of wild. He added that the core franchises content, Marvel, Star Wars, Frozen, etc., Frozen, okay, would remain exclusive to Disney-owned platforms. Disney is very strong, the most powerful brand, certainly in family entertainment, Iger said. Adding that what consumers see the live-action Little Mermaid in May, it'll remind you of just how strong the brand is. Hedging the bets on the Little Mermaid. Wow. So what happens if the Little Mermaid doesn't perform?
Uh-oh.
Is this going to remind us how strong the brand is?
That was a bad call on Iger's part.
Very bad.
You don't go in there. This was a bad call because... Look, maybe the internal numbers or the internal tracking for this movie is very good. And it probably is if Iger feels that confident. Sure. But you never know until you know. You never know until that opening weekend. And to sit there and say that the brand, basically the relevance of our brand hinges on this movie doing well. God, what was he thinking?
And I wouldn't count my chickens until they hatch, because I mean, even if there's a lot of people that are rooting for this film, anticipating this film is getting ripped before it is even getting into the theaters. I mean, this is not even just coming off of the backstory of the actress who is portraying Ariel, just all around the CGI with Sebastian and Flounder, and the overall look. The poster is very dark and gloomy. They're kind of relating it to Peter Pan and Wendy. Like, why is Disney having this kind of like dark, gloomy images? Give us something very bright and vibrant, especially when you're comparing it to a beloved animated feature film.
The issue that I'm having with this movie is that, well, number one, the original is like my baby. I absolutely love that movie. But aside from that, I don't know what to make of it, like box office wise, because on one hand, yeah, I hate the design of Sebastian. It just looks terrible. It reminds me of the Lion King live action, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't like Pumbaa either. It just did not look attractive or appealing at all. But my issue with the box office is that a lot of these live action films don't look appealing, but then they go on to make $1 billion. So I don't really know what this is going to do. it could do very, very well. I could see it doing very, very well because of the other live actions that have come out that also look terrible that did very, very well. But have we hit a point now where people are kind of burnt out with this stuff? Maybe we've had enough of these live actions that have not been good that people are now kind of like wise to it too. Hey, The Lion King wasn't great. Why are we going to spend the money on this one? So we'll see. Plus, we live in a whole new world, no pun intended. After the pandy, the theater chains and just the theater business in general is not performing like it was when The Lion King live action came out.
No.
Very different environment now. So I'm very curious how this movie does. I'm not completely writing it off like it's going to be a flop, but I'm not as confident. I'm not as confident in it as Bob Iger is, though. Not at all. Part
of the way you can actually tell how like the enthusiasm is related to a film is you can track its trailer, right? You could track those kind of metrics and how people, how excited people are for that film. As it relates to the views of the trailer and how viral it goes and so forth. This is Screen Rant right here talking about the big, movie trailers for 2023. And you'll find one glaring omission here. Little Mermaid's not part of this mix here.
Right.
It's like, okay, I understand that you yourself, Iger, are very excited for this film. We see Indiana Jones 5, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Mission Impossible, Oppenheimer, Barbie even, and nothing related to Little Mermaid in here. So it's like, okay, this is the top 13 for 2023. It doesn't make the list in Screen Rant.
And that's 13 movies. I mean, that's a big list. I mean, I could see like top 5. Okay, fine, they're not on the list.
Right.
13,
and they're not on the list.
Yeah.
Bob Iger's exact statements here when asked about franchises says this. Well, I think a lot of them, of course, but they're my babies in a way. Disney is very strong. It's the most powerful brand in certainly family entertainment, and we have a film coming up, Little Mermaid, at live action. I think when you see it, it will remind you just how strong the brand is. And that might be the case, Bob, but I mean, nobody. What if nobody, like Dan at Nerd said here, and you guys have said already, what if nobody sees this thing? And then how will that reflect on the brand if this thing is not actually successful? And like you said, George, it is being torn a new one in this whole thing. I don't know if I would have necessarily hitched my wagon to that horse. That is for sure. That's a big statement. Maybe I would have said, hey, our brand is extremely powerful. Here are these list of films that do very, very well on these streaming platforms month in, month out. Maybe you can say we've Avatar, huge film that is just now entered into the top 4 of films of all time. Even in a pandemic era or post-pandemic era or whatever, however you want to actually phrase that whole thing. And that's one of our brands being Disney. You could say something like that, but to
spotlight just one particular film that you don't even really know how it's going to turn out. And quite frankly, as I said, there are people who are Disney fans, non-Disney fans, kind of in the middle. They're just looking at the film as an overall whole. They're not looking at it as, okay, this is a Disney film. We're tying it to Disney. We're bashing Disney. They're just bashing the film for what it is. And to me, it's
Bob Iger himself expanding that out to the entire brand valuation.
What would have been the smarter move? And I'm surprised Bob Iger is masterful at PR, but on this, he really dropped the ball. What would have been the smarter move is to compare the power of the brand with something that was already a success, Way of Water. I mean,
that's what Dre said. Actually, you took the words right out of his mouth. So so it's unanimous to the fact of, you would think, common sense, you would pick a bigger. I mean, obviously, because he ended up mentioning that Avatar's coming to Disneyland, so he already went that far that it's that a big enough hype that you could actually say, oh yeah, it's coming to Disneyland Resort, that it's pick a franchise that is Resort that is successful. But the live action Little Mermaid, to me, and I'm not trying to diss this movie at all, but when I saw the trailer for The Little Mermaid, and I'm not talking about any kind of correlations, folks, with the young actress playing Ariel and Brandy. I am going by the film style. It kind of reminds me of The Wonderful World of Disney's Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella, where it kind of has that direct-to-video, straight to Disney Plus. To me, this doesn't seem like a film that would hold well in theaters.
Yeah.
It reflects the film reflects an outdated strategy.
Right.
You know,
and that's what we've been saying all along is that, and that's why I get really frustrated when people are like, oh, well, Disney hasn't changed, because the content of today is a product of 4 years ago. These films and these shows take time to produce.
They do.
You're not, even if Iger, he said, we're going to minimize the politics. Okay. Yes. But okay. So you're going to see the fruits of that comment in 4 years. It takes time. We're just now seeing the fruit of having no John Lasseter, and he left the company in 2018. We're just now seeing the result of that.
Yes.
So when people say, well, Disney's still woke, look at Proud Family. Yeah. Well, because Proud Family takes years to develop too. It's not an overnight thing.
I guess, I hear, pray tell, I actually heard word that apparently the one of the core executives related to Proud Family, if I'm not mistaken, it's the gal that said, I have a secret agenda or whatever during those Imagine Tomorrow videos that came out, right? Apparently, she's been elevated in positions. So that's going to be very, very interesting. However, yes, this is something that has just changed now. It's interesting because wasn't Iger head of creative for 2020, 2021?
It was.
It is interesting to kind of see how this has changed here, and in his own words, why he thinks that might have been the case here. Well, we'll continue.
Yo, how's that Little Mermaid trailer doing, by the way? And I'm not here to shit on the Little Mermaid. I frankly don't give a fuck. I have not watched a single live-action Disney Plus thing. Like they're making, none of them. I haven't watched this. I think I tried to watch Mulan. I think that's the only one that I watched. Yeah, I don't know about that, Bob. I feel like you guys have been kind of denigrating your brand, even the family-friendly aspect of it, for years. That's my take. But I guess we'll be reminded of how strong the brand is when we all go see The Little Mermaid. But he also had frank and interesting comments about Marvel and Star Wars, suggesting that the company is carefully thinking about its approach to those brands moving forward. This is where I get fucking triggered. What we have to look at Marvel is not necessarily the volume of Marvel storytelling, but how many times we go back to the well on certain characters, Iger said. Sequels typically work well for us, but do you need a third or fourth, for instance? Or is it time to turn to other characters? There's nothing in any way inherently off in terms of the Marvel brand. I think we just have to look at what characters and stories we are mining. Holy shit. Let's keep going before I lose my mind here. And if you look at the trajectory of Marvel over the next 5 years, you'll see a lot of newness, he added. Now we're going to turn back to the Avengers franchise, but with a whole set of different Avengers as an example.
We'll let them go.
Wow! First of all, I almost just immediately got triggered and immediately want him to just shut his mouth. Because you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of being at a corporate franchise restaurant and there's something going on. There's a downturn, for the restaurant, and some douchebag from corporate comes to the restaurant and wants to act like he has the perfect solution for this exact store in this exact location in this exact market. Dude, you're not from here. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. That's that kind of energy that I'm picking up from this. And I hate this kind of shit, dude. When you get in a tough spot as a business, right? When you start to get that things are not going well, you're going to have this corporate shit happen where you've got the suits essentially trying to speak to Wall Street without any of the context or perspective of what it's actually like on the ground. Powers at the top, perspectives at the bottom. The two need to meet. It's ridiculous. So just out the gate, like what we have to look at with Marvel, I don't know, maybe it's just the fucking coffee, maybe, I don't know. But for me, immediately, what we have to look at with Marvel, shut your fucking mouth, Bob. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You know what you say about Marvel? Kevin Feige's the greatest producer of all time. I'm absolutely certain that they'll figure it out. And yeah, we've had some projects that haven't landed, blah, 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 blah. Shut your mouth, dude. You don't know what you're talking about. But besides that, let's go on to what he actually says. Sequels typically work well for us, but do you need a third or a fourth, for instance? Or is it time to turn to other characters? There's nothing in any way inherently off in terms of Marvel. We have to look at what characters or stories we're reminding. The idea that Quantumania is bad because it's the third Ant-Man. The idea that the fourth Thor is bad because you went to the Thor well too many times. Oh, god damn, that's frustrating. What are you talking about? You know why those movies suck? Because they suck. They're goobly glob bullshit, half-released, half-finished products. It's so fucking stupid. Taika fucked off for 9 months during the pandy, having threesomes in public, and the whole movie's goobly glob. They had to save the movie in post, and they didn't really save the movie in post. Okay, now Quantumania, I don't know what they were doing on the Quantumania set, but holy shit, it's literally one of the worst edited, most horrible movies I've ever seen. My God, it has nothing to do with Ant-Man. And in fact, it's, oh, Jesus Christ.
He's great. He is really funny. I love this guy. I really do. I've been a fan of his for a while. I mean, I don't agree with all his takes, but he always brings it. He always brings it.
I think on this one, though, I think he's exactly spot on. You cannot tell me that those movies failed or weren't as successful as maybe intended, right? We actually just got the numbers back from Ant-Man here.
Well, and there's a contradiction here because we just heard from Bob Iger that we're doing Toy Story 5 and Frozen 3. So what's the deal? Like, this movie failed. Josh is right. This movie failed. It's because it wasn't that good. It didn't resonate with audiences. That's the only reason. It's not because it was the third Ant-Man movie. Mission Impossible has a ton of sequels, and they're doing just fine.
Yeah, we're talking about 7+. I mean, it's Fast and Furious, right? They're putting all their eggs in that in the 10th basket, right? Because there's things to mine there from that franchise in total, right? I can't figure out how Bob Iger would come to that conclusion that we just did too many one-offs for individual characters like this, and that's why they weren't successful. No, they were not very well done movies. They had issues. They had problems related to them, production problems, but also too, it just didn't resonate with audiences.
Right.
How many times did we hear people come back from Doctor Strange 2 or Thor 4 or Quantumania and say, I just didn't. I don't know. It just wasn't that great a film. They didn't necessarily capitalize on the characters that they had. They changed the characters. Let's say, maybe for the worse when it came to Wanda, Doctor Strange, Thor, so forth, like that. And they didn't like the direction that those films were actually going into. This film right here, it's only going to probably top out around $500 million. It's nowhere even close to getting back its production costs or its marketing and distribution costs. And that's not a fault of going back to the Ant-Man well. It's just not a great Ant-Man film that didn't feature a lot of the characters that people had fallen in love with, for example, right? This, I mean, it is so unbelievably frustrating. It would be like if Iger said, with Star Wars, I mean, our problem is, you know what? We had too much Han, too much Luke, too much Leo. We gotta, take those characters aside, and we have to bring in completely new characters to replace them. That would be an insane thing, as said now, because some people are saying, well, that's why these films may not have failed, because you didn't capitalize on those classic characters. That is what he's saying here with Marvel.
Yeah,
unbelievable. Yeah. George,
learning the wrong lessons.
My frustration with everything, and I know big time corporate CEO people of any kind of company is never going to get up on a podium and admit the fallings of the company in every worst way. But in a way, I hate it when they kind of sugarcoat gingerbread things to make it sound like these projects are so hyped up that it's like you sit back and you say, did you just watch the same movie that I did? Because if you did, you must have fell asleep, because this movie completely stunk to high heaven and low hell.
Yes, I will agree. Let me go ahead and put let me see. Spider-Man No Way Home. We'll put that in here for the argument, right? Black Panther, Doctor Strange. There we go. There we go. Okay. There's one that stands out amongst all of these. Right? We have Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Thor Love and Thunder, Ant-Man Quantumania, Spider-Man No Way Home. The one that dealt into nostalgia is the one at the top of this list.
Right.
The one that went against the grain and tried to do more with the universe or the characters, or did something that maybe subverted expectations, let's say. They're at the bottom there. That's the key point to take away. It's not so much going back to the wells. It's how well was that executed. Now, look, you can do like a Civil War type thing, right, where you bring in more characters in order to augment who's ever featured on screen. It's an idea. Or two, you can. I think you can actually, go back to the well and actually produce really, really good stories that people are very much engaged in. I know, like the Captain America series of films, like the three of them are very, very strong, each in their own way. And that speaks to not just the quality of that character, because that character's kind of it's interesting. He's not super dynamic, right? Things change around him, and how he reacts is very, very interesting. But that character didn't necessarily have to change all that much. It was the scenarios, the quality of execution of his story, and so forth that got people enraptured into his story and kept people coming back for more.
Well, and it's even, look at some of Tom Cruise's films. I mean, he's getting a new Mission Impossible. Mission Impossibles have been out for decades. The same type of story, the same character, the same actor, but why do they still make more movies? Because they're successful, not just because they're getting the butts in the seats, but because they tell a very strong, pioneering story with a great character arc. And even look at Top Gun, a movie that spans from the original to the sequel, of how well that film was done. And it's like
even Spider-Man No Way Home, when you bring in other Spider-Mans, right, from previous adaptations and do them very, very well, that's at the top of the list. Go ahead, OJ.
Yeah, and that's why I don't believe in fatigue. When people talk, there's Star Wars fatigue, there's superhero fatigue, and yada, yada, yada. There's not fatigue. The only time anyone gets fatigued is when the product's quality starts dipping. The reason why you start hearing about Marvel fatigue right now is because the quality has dipped and people are tuning out a little bit. Same with Star Wars, is that people were tuning out. They were fatigued because the product just wasn't that great. So once you start creating a good product, they'll consume it over and over and over and over and over again. We've seen it with Mission Impossible. You just have to maintain that. We've seen it with Marvel. Marvel had 20 something movies in the MCU leading up to Endgame, and they all did most of them, 90% of them did very, very well, right?
Yeah,
because these were quality films, and it kept audiences engaged. But now you're starting to get the She-Hulks and the Multiverse of Madnesses and things like that. That's why there's fatigue. The product isn't that good.
Well, and he even says, it's like, we have a whole new cast of Avengers coming. Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you really want to, hedge your bets with Miss Marvel and She-Hulk? I mean, are we serious right now? Yeah. Do you think that's necessarily going to get people in seats? Do you think they're demanding something new? Or are they demanding something probably that leans into their great experiences that they had before, but built up on?
Right.
I mean, it's just absolutely bizarre how you would say this. Dinner Nerds has a little bit more words here.
Yeah, yeah.
And
he actually touches upon that Avengers thing. It's pretty good.
Right.
Woo! Shut your fucking mouth, Bob. You have no idea what you're talking about. You tried to... bro. And if you look at the trajectory of Marvel over the next 5 years, you'll see a lot of newness. No, you fucking won't. No, you won't. You're going to see Hugh Jackman Wolverine. Patrick Stewart. You're going to see Sir Ian McKellen. And then when you get to Secret Wars, you're going to see you're going to see all these motherfuckers from 20 to 30 years ago. The entire catalog of popular Marvel characters. Nostalgia is the drug. That is why the multiverse fucking exists. So what are you talking about? We're going to see newness. And and literally the fucking gall of this guy to be like, we're going back to the Avengers franchise, but it's going to be an all new, different Avenger team as example. Yo, how many of you, legitimate question here, how many of you are actually super excited for an all new cast of Avengers? How many of you think that the next Avengers movie is going to be real dope? Because it's all new. It's a whole new set. That is literally like the opposite problem that they're having. The problem is a lot of these new Avengers just don't have it. They're not draws. They're not 75-year-old fucking characters that have generational attachments to them. Which, by the way, T'Challa's one of those characters. It's like, it's so fucking mind-blowing to me what they've done, because T'Challa is one of those characters from the fucking 60s. He's earned that. He is that. Not Shuri as Black Panther, who is great, but not T'Challa. Sam Wilson is not Steve Rogers. What are you talking about? It's so crazy to me, dude. It's so fucking crazy to me. It blows my mind. It blows my mind. It feels corporate enough and out of touch enough for me to be like, well, I see one of two things happening here. One or two things. And yeah, I'll calm down a little bit. It's okay. We'll calm down. Chet's giving me a look over there. Either Feige knows 100% that this motherfucker is wrong and he's going to tell him that he's wrong, or if Iger actually tries to like institute some of this thinking, I see really bad things happening. I see really bad things happening.
Who was in charge of creative for 2 years?
Right. And I think there's a little bit of the audience too is partly, we have to also put that in context, the context here, right? Who he's talking to. He's talking to a bunch of bankers.
Sure.
So the conversations he's having with the Morgan Stanley group could very well be different than the conversations, and it probably is very different than the conversations he's having with Kevin Feige.
That's fair.
So I think there is an element of that, but Bob Iger needs to be very careful here, because one of the big reason why his first, the tenure that he had before he left was so successful was because he knew how to cultivate talent. He knew how to bring in talent and kind of leave them alone enough where they can kind of do their thing.
Yeah.
Hopefully he's not losing his way, and hopefully he's not getting in there now and starting to, like Josh is saying, like, trying to be like this like corporate guy, trying to mandate things and learn all the wrong lessons. I hope that's not the case. I'm really, really hoping, I'm trying to stay optimistic here, that this is just for this Morgan Stanley crowd. But if it's not, and it's God forbid.
But at the same time, if you look at when they had removed Lasseter for the notions of, whatever, but also because he was a creative, that's like, if it's junk, don't put it out, but what happened to him? He got the boot. But when Lasseter got the boot, who was in charge of that time? Because it sure wasn't JPEG.
Right.
Lasseter, I remember hearing stories where he'd tell animators, this sucks, go back, do it all over. This is not good. And that really rubbed a lot of people the wrong way.
Well, you know who else did do that? Walt Disney.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Walt Disney was not throwing around praise. I mean, the best you would get is that'll do. That'll do.
And that was like, whoa, you were on cloud nine if you got that'll do from Walt. Woo! Man, that was real good,
Yeah.
It's interesting. it's fashionable right now to hate on Chapek. I get it. I understand.
It is.
You know,
and
mistakes
it's
were made.
fashionable to hate on Disney too. It's a trend, you know,
It is.
to be honest.
It is. It is. But I want to say the reason why you're hearing about people like Ian McKellen being brought in to the Marvel MCU now, the reason why you're hearing about Hugh Jackman,
Patrick Stewart.
Is it for Deadpool? Is it Ryan Reynolds? Is that
You got it.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure. I just want to be accurate here. And the reason why you're hearing like, hey, maybe we can get Johnny Depp back into the fold, it's because Chapek, he wasn't that great a creative. Maybe let's say he knew what sold, and
Right.
he knew that those characters did sell, and that's why it's like, ooh, let's kind of bring them back into the fold. We're even hearing talk about Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. coming back in. Why?
Right.
Because he knew that they put asses in seats, right?
Yeah.
They bring them
exactly.
in, and so I'm very surprised that Iger would even word this, even to a group of investors. Oh, we just went to the well too many times.
Oh,
It's not you going to the well, Iger. It's it's how you
which
bring
what you
up
did with it.
exactly.
It's
how you-
frustrating.
Reminds me of The Ring.
Yeah.
Now, I do want to say before we move on to our next segment, everyone should check out Den of Nerds. His live shows are absolutely great. This was actually a clip from the live show. He does a really, really entertaining hour. I think every morning except Wednesdays. That's for his members only. Really awesome dude. Really fun. If you're into nerdy stuff like MCU, Star Wars, all that good stuff, he's your guy. So I'll link his channel down below. Check him out. But let's move on to Take My Hand and let's go to Parksville.
yes. Where Daddy Josh is there and he can tell us lies, lies, lies. Tell me, sweet little. No. Okay. Here he actually has something to show. Imagine that. This is very interesting. So this is at SXSW Conference 2023, if I'm not mistaken here. And I believe this is during the Film and TV Festival portion of it, if I'm not mistaken. Please, I'm sure you can provide me a comment and tell me I'm wrong. But this is where that is. And this is the video that the Disney Parks YouTube channel actually put out highlighting some moments during that event, during Daddy Josh's speaking engagement here. So we'll go ahead and play a little bit of this because George, you brought this to my attention. This is pretty fascinating. I do agree with you. I think this is pretty fascinating. We've seen a little bit of this technology before, but now we're actually seeing in the public sphere and actually taken to new lengths in some places. So let's see. Here we go.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you for
coming
being
up.
here.
You got it. I want to introduce you to my friend Tinkerbell.
What?
Jingles, set me down, please.
I'm sorry
Excuse
about
me.
that, Tink. You told me
What are ya,
to go
a
lightly
pirate?
there.
Wow.
I
that's
did,
cool.
didn't I?
Well, it's
Oh.
good to see you,
Are all
Tinkerbell.
those people out here to see me, Josh?
I think they're here to see you. Certainly not for me. They're not here to see me.
Oh, everyone. Don't you know how to greet a fairy? Come on, clap your hands.
Can we pause it real quick?
Sure.
Okay, here's the thing. The technology is brilliant. I love the use of a real person, right? It's a meet and greet with a real human being, but yet it's done in a super clever way. It feels more on model, right? For Tinkerbell. She's actually that size. The thing that bothers me though, and I hate to shit on
I don't know if you're going to say the same thing I was going to, but I have an issue, but I want to see if it's the same issue that you would have.
Okay. The issue that I have is that you can hear her talking. I want to hear the Tink voice. The ding 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 ding. I don't want to hear someone talking. This reminds me of the animated movies, the direct-to-video animated movies where she had a voice. I want the Peter Pan Tinkerbell with the little Tinker voice. And look, and I'm a real stickler for animation. I'm picky with this stuff. That's the only thing I don't like about it. I understand it's meet and greet, but that bugs me.
Okay, now my issue with it is I didn't actually think of that, but now it kind of ties into what may bother me about this is that how they incorporate a real life person, but yet they use in a digital format, which is really cool. But now will that give Disney the discretion to then lose another face-to-face meet and greet with an actual person that they would not necessarily have to pay by the
I
hour?
don't think so.
Well, I
But
would.
go ahead, OG.
Here's the thing, and it's gonna be real controversial. I'm probably gonna get canceled for this. I actually like some of these moves. Like, I look at like you're right, George. It might cost a job, or or whatever. But I like Disney's approach, and we'll see another thing here, which is kind of pointing to this too. But I like Disney's approach of kind of creating these characters in real form. They're more on model with the actual characters. It was always weird to me that Tinkerbell is like, 5 feet tall. It's very weird to me to have a 6 foot Chippendale.
And
No,
I want to see them more true to the animation. And if they can do that, I think that's a plus.
So, and as I said, for me, like I like character interaction, and that kind of takes me back to, my childhood and everything. But I mean, like, I wouldn't stand in a line to actually right now as a grown man to meet Tinkerbell, that just kind of, but I would stand,
Well, Dre, we know somebody that would. We won't say
We know
names.
somebody who was. We know somebody who. That's a big part of their Disney parks experience.
Yes, and I know that same person too. So. but actually, this would actually be kind of cool to actually stand in line to really think that I'm talking to someone who is the size of a pixie, and I think that's why that they incorporated the more speaking than just the tinker sound.
So the way this works is there is an actual gal dressed up like this, but in front of in front of a camera or a series of cameras in order to get the whole profile, and her image is being represented in real time in that lantern. And so she can interact with you. So George, the idea that they get rid of an actress, no.
Okay, they would still need
they would
someone
still be
there.
there.
Okay.
Yes, because it's real time.
Oh, it's
okay. So
real
is
time.
that
Okay,
okay? So is that like what they did at Disneyland the one year to promote Alice Through the Looking Glass, where they had Johnny Depp as the Mad Hatter, and they had him in real time.
Yes, very similar. It's just
okay.
the what makes this cool is it's kind of like a Zoom call, right? But it's how it's packaged. What makes it really kind of next level, let's say. And honestly, the Imagineers have been wanting to have Tinkerbell represented at her scale for many, many years. It was one of the reasons why you go into Pixie Hollow, everything gets big around you. That's like, oh, you're shrinking down to her size, Pixie's size, in order to interact with her in that space. Because before, they didn't really have the method by which to do that, and that's why you couldn't meet Tinkerbell for so long, interestingly enough. But people still wanted to meet her. Back in the day, it was, can we have her, make an appearance in the fireworks, even when there aren't fireworks? That was with the whole drone thing that I've talked about before. That was all to provide a way that people could actually say Tink. Well, so Imagineers have wanted to do this for quite some time.
Well, I like it. I would like to see them take it further. Like I said, you could have a platform with Chip and Dale and have them be the actual size of actual Chip and Dale. Like I said, it's always been weird to me that you have a 6 foot tall Chip and Dale walk around the parks. They're not that tall, obviously, in the content. And I know I'm being such an asshole. Like, I know I'm being like so picky, but that's just how I feel.
Let me real quick. Just let me ask you: when you say for Chip and Dale, would you then have it as the representation of the costume characters, but just shrunk, or would you have them as an animated digital form?
Because
I would have animated digital.
You could do Chip and Dale and Tinkerbell. That's what I was going to get to, George. In like a mocap suit representing those characters. And then, what you see is them actually animated form. And then you see them actually talk to you. Not too dissimilar to what actually goes on in Turtle Talk with Crush, for example, but full body. You could do that. It is possible.
Well, and I guess it would be a little bit more realistic, because if you really think about it, even with costume characters, everyone recognizes Mickey's voice. Everyone recognizes Donald's voice. So to actually approach those characters, and a kid could be saying, how come they're miming? You know, how come they're not actually speaking? So this could be a way to actually get the actual character to have a one-on-one.
There was a living character initiative that WDI had in-house for quite a while, and that was, to your point, George, how can we get these costume characters to actually talk to you? We saw the talking Mickey for a little while before the pandemic, how that interaction could actually take place. We've seen little exhibits at some of these events, like D23 Expo, for example. I think Destino was one of those, and so forth. So this is where they're going. But for Tinkerbell right here, it's a gal, and she's interacting with you, which is why they may have not gone with the mute Tinkerbell from the film.
It's impressive. It's really, really, really impressive. And like I said, I want to see them do more of this. You know, I think this is something that Walt Disney, and I know people throw this around like crazy, and I get it, you know, but I think Walt would have gone in a similar direction. We're constantly trying to provide that realism of trying to meet the character as presented in the films. Yep. You know, and I just think that we're going to start seeing more and more and more of this. So I'm excited. Now, here's one worry though that I have, real quick, Dre. We have Walt Disney Imagineering has a history of showcasing new technology, trotting it out in the parks, right? Trotting it out for about 2 weeks, and we're never seeing it again. Lucky the Dinosaur is a perfect example of that.
Right.
The Muppet.
Where's Baby Groot? Like, I'm still like, where?
Right.
Yeah. Where is that character?
Right, exactly. So are we ever going to see this thing? I mean, I'm sure it'll premiere in the parks, but is it going to be a mainstay, or is it going to be 2 weeks and gone? So we'll see.
I could see this as like part of a queue, even.
Oh yeah.
You know, where Tinkerbell's actually, you know, while you're passing her, hey, what's going on? Oh, hey, you know, guy with the red hat, come here.
Or maybe even incorporating a double meet and greet where Peter Pan is holding on to the lantern.
Exactly.
And where she could interact with Peter and to the guests.
That's pretty good. I like it, George.
I like it.
There we go. That's a good idea. It's probably where they go.
Ooh, I like the sound of that.
I do
So
too.
Tate, I want you to meet Austin. Austin was gracious enough to come out back on stage. So this is Austin.
Oh, hi there, Austin. It's nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you too. Can I call you Tink as well?
Oh, absolutely.
Now, Austin, you've never met Tinkerbell like this before. Okay,
never.
Well, you can ask her anything that you want.
Let's
Anything
see.
at all.
Okay, if you insist.
Oh, okay.
So really,
Of course I am. I'm a fairy.
is this your first time at South by Southwest, or is there like always been a pipeline between Neverland and South by?
Oh, I can fly anywhere I want to, really. I was actually busy earlier today. Peter promised that I'd go on a treasure hunt with him, but I got a little bit bored of that because he brought Wendy along, so I thought I'd come here instead.
I think you made the right choice.
I think I did too, and now everyone gets to look at me, so it's a win-win, isn't it?
Oh, totally, 100%. Speaking of Peter,
one thing,
you know, I feel like Peter.
Go ahead.
So funny. Her dress is a lot longer than the one that Mark Davis drew. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, what's going on there? I don't remember hosiery either. What is? Yeah. I don't know if this is completely on model.
No.
Yeah, because I mean, when she was measuring her hips, the fingertips came way past the dress there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Mark Davis might not be too happy about that, but let's continue.
Not a very good Marilyn Monroe facsimile either. No, I'm joking.
Kind of steals some of the limelight for you. You're the one that's always, you know, on the intros to the films and everything. Do you ever?
Not at all.
No?
He doesn't steal the limelight from me because everyone's too busy looking at me already. It's not
Totally
a problem
agree.
at all.
One more question. Why green?
All right.
Why green? I feel like you always wear green.
Well, I don't know. It's my favorite color. What's yours?
Mine is blue, dark blue.
Oh, you like blue? I have a friend named Silvermist. She loves blue too.
Austin, thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me
I
for this.
appreciate
This
you
was
being a
magical.
Good sport coming on out here. I'm not going to take that. You can take that with you.
Thank you very much.
Tinkerbell, thank you. I appreciate you coming today.
Oh, no problem at all, Josh. I know you promised me food a little bit later, all right? So I promised tiny tacos, and I expect them later. All right?
You got it. You got it.
Oh, perfect. Bye, everyone.
So
Too bad.
that's pretty cool.
Okay, there you go.
Not too bad.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, actually, my biggest thing is seeing it in the parks. I want to see it in the parks.
Yeah.
And it's like they constantly tease us with this, which the technology is phenomenal, but it's like it's always in R&D, and then it never gets past that.
This image here on screen, if you kind of, it's a little hard to see, but you can see that they are experimenting also too with other containers,
Backgrounds and stuff.
Yeah, with other environments. That's gonna be cool. I think we will see this. I think it's straightforward enough to implement. Let's say.
Yeah. Interesting.
All right, here we go.
So, Tinkerbell, new projects that are pretty far along. The last one that I have for you today, though, is much, much earlier in its development project.
So that tells you the Tinkerbell stuff. I remember seeing something like it years ago. So that has been developed for a very long time. It's probably close to execution in the parks, but here's something totally new.
Which makes me much, much more nervous about showing it to you, but we're going to. Disney's got a long history of using robotics to create characters that tell our stories and really connect with guests. And over the years, we've made tremendous breakthroughs in what those robots can do, going all the way back to Abraham Lincoln rising out of his chair at the 1964 World's Fair. Well, today, I'm excited for you to be the first ones to see our next step forward. To help tell that story, I want to welcome up Imagineers Morgan Pope and Tony Dohe. Tony, how are you?
Doing great.
Josh. Morgan, great to see you. Great to see you. All right, now this is the first time that we've talked publicly about this particular project. So I guess we'll get right to it. What do you got for us today?
Okay, well.
Are you nervous, by the way?
Yes.
Oh, yes. What do you got?
We're chasing after this idea of dynamic robots. And it's because we're inspired by this notion that our characters in our films are so dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you need to build robots that are up for anything if you want to match that. So whether that's robots that get hurled 65 feet in the air like this. Thank you for greenlighting that, by the way.
You got to take a little risk every once in a while. I knew that was going to work.
Yeah, okay. Good, I'm glad you did.
I did.
Or if you wanted to drop from that same terrifying height, but without the benefit of a net, like this.
Pretty cool.
Now that's interesting.
Iron Man, maybe?
I'm thinking
That's-
Iron Man
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had not seen that before.
I
we
didn't
did this
either.
video. That's probably where they're going right there.
And that's why I said there's a lot of potential with it, with the Marvel stage show and the Hyperion. You can do stuff like that.
But also, but to Iger's credit, remember we're getting newness, so it's.
Oh yeah, that's true. It won't be Iron Man.
Oh, it'll be Iron Heart. There you
Yes, there you go.
It's pretty cool.
Well, so assuming we can build a really tough robot, that'd give us a chance to try some of the crazy stuff that our characters in our films do.
Yeah, robotics is all about precision, repeatability, inhuman perfection.
Okay, wait.
Characters.
Is this supposed to be? Is this kind of what it? Is this happening?
Yeah, no, that's why she has a helmet on.
Okay.
We're good.
All
We're
right.
good.
Wow, she crawled out of the box. That's
pretty crazy.
This is
dude.
part of the
I'll
plan.
stay out of the
Yeah, our characters are all about personality, right? So can you imagine what it's like putting on roller skates for the very first time? It's awkward, it's clumsy, it's slightly terrifying, but ultimately it's
that looks really.
That's really good.
Well,
And
this
just
is
think,
scary.
that's just like the underskeletal. Like if they had this completely, like
full
dolled up with
formed
the
out.
fur and the uniform.
It really does kind of. It is kind of a scary road we're going down, because you can pair this with artificial intelligence, and you got something here.
OG. Those plans much more sophisticated than this. So this is just an entertainment company doing it right now. But let's continue.
exhilarating.
Nicely done.
This is our latest effort in making robots that we think can have an emotional connection with our guests. We are using high-performance materials and taking advantage of mechanical scaling effects, so she's dynamic and tough, but we're also using motion capture data because we want to make performances that have emotion embedded in them.
Yeah, and
So they are using mocap technology. Yeah, just to be clear.
speaking of which, we're Disney, right? So we're all about emotions.
Yes.
So can we make an audience actually feel anxious for our little robot here if we ask her to premiere her big stunt in front of this huge South by Southwest crowd?
I say we give it a shot. She does. I gotta say, she looks a little nervous here.
She's got
She's got it.
got this.
Okay.
Got this. All right.
All
All
right.
right. She's got this.
It's incredible.
Josh, you might want to stand
Am I okay?
a little bit.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah!
Yes. All right.
Woo-wee. Wow. So
That's pretty crazy.
Dude, that's crazy. I'm telling you. Well, you know where this is going to go first is that Zootopia land over there. Is what, Shanghai?
I would think so, yes, but I mean, this is still pretty early in development. I wonder if it'll make its debut over there. But I mean, man, you could see it. She propelled forward too. Do you see that?
Yeah.
That's
It's cool
really
tech. I mean, and that's the thing when I see stuff like this, yeah, it's cool to see this version that, you know, the Judy Hopps, that's awesome. But my mind goes into like, what's the potential with other characters, other franchises? What can you do with this technology? There's so much potential here. And I'm telling you, the meet and greet, I feel like with this and the Tinkerbell, the meet and greet situation as we know it is going to be changing.
Absolutely. It already has been. You know, when Mickey could speak to you and speak your name and so forth. I mean, that was more than 5 years ago now.
Right.
I expect these things to be changing in a profound way because I think Disney understands that emotional connection with their beloved characters is something that only they can produce. They have, and that's a connection that they can uniquely make with their audience. Very, very interesting. George,
Very interesting.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I echo what you guys are saying. I feel like this is the future. This is the way. As I said,
This is the way?
This is the way. This
And
this is the way. That as I said, I don't have really a problem with it as long as, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean cutting more potential jobs just to save a buck. You know, if they kind of incorporate this mixed in with, you know, still having meet and greet cast members, you know, have it for like certain characters, like Judy Hopps, like Tinkerbell. I'm all for it. I think it's really cool. I think it would definitely hype up the overall aesthetics of the park as time moves forward. But my thing is it going to actually be showcased in the park? And as OG had asked, for how long? Is it a long term, or is this going to be like a limited release for like a couple months and then it'll move to another Disney park around the globe and then you never see it again?
Well, that's what happened with Lucky the Dinosaur in the early 2000s. That's what happened to the Muppets Mobile Lab around that same time. Even the Hulk at DCA was there for a few weeks. Now it's gone. Now that's going to Paris. Like, that's why when I see this stuff, I get excited. But then at that same time, I'm thinking back in my head, how long is it going to last? So hopefully the Tink stuff, that seems like, I agree with you, Dre. That seems like something that might be a mainstay. But we'll see. You just never know with the Imaginary.
Yeah, I think the Judy Hopps thing might be application limited, you know, whereas Tinkerbell, you could see where that could slot in various venues and in various circumstances. So I think it'll be interesting to watch this kind of stuff. Again, I am kind of like you, OG, where it's like, oh, we see it, but it's like, oh, are we actually going to see it? Few times we see something hyped like this, and it's like we actually get it and get it on a regular basis, like Spider-Man, for example, right? When we saw that, it was like, ooh, that looks awesome, but are they going to actually be able to accomplish that day in, day out, and so forth? And they did, to their credit, right? Well, we've seen so many things. Lucky the Dinosaur. Being one of the Muppets Mobile Labs, right? Even the Talking Mickey, for example, tech that they've already established, we don't see it again. So I just hope that some of this stuff, like Judy Hopps and Tinkerbell, for sure, find their way into the parks and are implemented in such a way that they can actually have a recurring place there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, fascinating conversation today, guys. We talked all about Marvel and the approach with Marvel and Star Wars. We dipped into Den of Nerds and the mind of Josh. That was pretty fun.
Pretty
And
fun.
it was fun. He's great. Again, check him out at home if you're interested in like the nerd culture stuff. He does a phenomenal live show. We also dipped into Imagineering, doing some really cool stuff over there. So a lot of cool stuff. Comment down below with all your thoughts and opinions on what we talked about. We're going to go ahead and close it out. We're going to start with producer Dre. Dre, if you can let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media.
Hey, the best place to find me is going to be at VashSky on Twitter. It's right down there. Just go ahead, type that in, and I should pop up. For if you want to follow me, you can go do so for all the robust discussion right there, as Christine Waysons McCarthy would say. It's been interesting because I put a little message out. I don't know, OG, if you've seen it, but somebody was like, hey, look, Tony Baxter, he is part of the Splash Mountain thing. And it's like, oh, yeah, check the date on that article about, mid 2020 thereabouts, right? There's a reason that you haven't seen him for quite some time as related to that project. But if you want to go ahead and follow that story, go do so on Twitter. And if you want to go ahead and see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you watch right now at Orange Grove 55. We have some amazing shows in the works, upcoming, already posted from the likes of Citrus Schooner down below, OG55, and Orange Nerd to my left, if I'm not mistaken, and a great one with Jay from Story Geeks talking all about Star Wars and The Mandalorian and so forth. He also had a recent upload from Up. Absolutely, guys, you should totally watch those videos. And hey, subscribe where you can see my own Freshly Squeezed. You search for Juice News and Info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove. And because we're talking about Marvel,
Thank you very much.
There we go. And down below, Mr. Balls to the Wall, Disney Family Man. If you can let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media.
Absolutely. You can find me on my YouTube channel, Disney Family Man 23. You can interact with me on Twitter at Disney George. You could also check out the new podcast I'm part of called A Walk with Walt. But of course, you'll find me here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
There we go. All right, everybody, comment down below. Smash that like button. Thank you so much for watching, and I want to thank my brothers, Mr. VashSky and Disney Family Man, for joining me today on this incredible conversation. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, have a marvelous day.